Watch KSTV weeknights at 7:30 and 11 Eastern, and anytime with Inside On Demand on Channel 103.
To help us get ready for UK's date with the Cards, we're now happy to be joined by Mark Ennis from the Big East blog, Big East Coast Bias on SB Nation. A lot is going into this game. Of course, a lot of hype with the fans, the players talking trash on Twitter. The spread right now is anywhere 11, 12, 13, 14. I think that is maybe a little high for the spread. I know coming from the Kentucky side, when you look at that game, do you think that's about right, or these teams are maybe a little closer?
I think it's probably good for it's maybe a little high for this game, just because there really haven't been any blowouts. Even the 08 blowout sort of just happened at the very end. You know, when Kentucky won by 25, but there have not been any blowouts, even when maybe you could really say one team is a lot better than the other. So yeah, it's probably a little high.
When I look at it, I think this is probably as optimistic as Kentucky will be all season entering this first game. And for Louisville, we expect them to get better as the year goes on. They're looking to become a better team. So probably the closest that they would be matched at any point in the season. But from a coaching side, we see two very different perspectives. Joker Phillips has been a little more relaxed, I think, doing ice cream socials, doing swimming parties and everything else. Charlie Strong is getting a lot of publicity for the very tough workouts he's putting his guys through. When you look at each side, do you think Charlie Strong is getting his guys ready, or Joker Phillips is maybe making a mistake?
No, I don't think so. I think that Joker's coaching like a guy. Everything's on the line for him, but his reaction to that is I'm gonna sort of wing it. I'm gonna relax a little bit. And I think Charlie's maybe for the first time at Louisville feeling some expectations. The first 2 years it's really been the same thing. He picked at last and then picked 7th in the Big East. Really not much expected. And I think this is the first time since he's been at Louisville going into the year. There's things expected of him, and I think it kind of shows. They've been pretty intense.
What are realistic expectations for Louisville? We hear fans talk about the possibility of a BCS Bowl, Big East title, maybe win 10, 11 games. From your perspective, what are realistic expectations for this year's Louisville team?
Well, I mean, they tied for the Big East last year, won at West Virginia. So I think the expectation to win the Big East is reasonable, because virtually everybody that did anything at all on that team from last year is back, and they were freshmen and sophomores. So I mean, I think winning the Big East is pretty reasonable. People saying that they're going to go undefeated, that sort of thing, that's probably a little bit of an exaggeration, just because they're still going to be really young. There's going to be the clunker. There almost always is, and it's hard to go undefeated. I don't care who, what conference you're in. So that sort of thing's a little bit exaggerated, but I think the expectation at least to win the Big East is reasonable, because they tied for it last year with such a team really learning on the job.
Do you think that the offense, and now Sean Watson is in charge of the offense, they made that transition during the season last year? A lot of expectations offensively with the different players. What do you think you're going to see from that offense, and how different will it be from what Kentucky saw last year in the when they played?
Well, they're calling it pretty explicitly, a West Coast offense. I think you're going to see more tight ends, more sort of quick, short passes, that sort of thing. Last year they're kind of run-oriented and they sort of throw it down the field and play action, that sort of thing. So I think it'll look different, but I think we don't know. I mean, I think there's an element really with both teams where the offenses are going to look different than what we saw last year, and it's one of the odd things about this game is that you really can't look at last year's game and learn anything. Almost everything has come different from this game last year, less than a year ago.
And even a quarterback, Will Stein entered the season last year, is the guy that had that position under control. Teddy Bridgewater now is one of the hottest names in the country in terms of young quarterbacks. Is that a one quarterback job right now? Is that Bridgewater's and Stein is the backup, or do you think we're going to see still a little mixing up of the two guys?
I don't think, unless something happens to Teddy, I don't think that you'll see Will Stein, unless it's mop-up duty. I think it's his job, especially because of the way that bowl game went, where he really got pounded, and so that whole game I think really endeared him, and I think it's really going to be his job going forward.
Now, Michael Lee Harris, of course, tore his ACL. He's out for the season. Might not have been available for this game. We don't know. But Louisville has weapons at wide receiver, weapons at running back. Kentucky is coming in with a defense where they're saying we have these young guys, but they fly all over the field. We give you different looks. If you're Louisville, what are the maybe the players or the looks that you want to try to really take advantage of or exploit against that Kentucky defense?
Well, I think the Kentucky secondary was already going to be the place where I think Louisville was going to try to attack, because the corner position, maybe the least strong, the weakest Kentucky's been in a long time. I mean, they've typically had pretty good defensive backs, but not this year. And then you lost Marcus Caffey, who had a pretty good spring. He had to move Martavius Nellum's now from safety to corner, something they liked him at safety. So I think that that's the place where Louisville will probably try to exploit Kentucky the most, because Kentucky's probably going to be pretty good up front. Rumpf and Cobble, those guys are big, SEC-sized guys. So I think, yeah, you'll probably see them try to attack through the air.
Now, on the other side of things, Louisville's defense, Charlie Strong is a defensive guy, and we've seen them get better, more physical, more attacking. Take us through U of L's defense and what you expect from them, and some of the guys that Kentucky fans should watch for in that game.
Well, I think at Media Day, and then Louisville's Media Day too, Charlie said they're a 90% man team, and I think that you'll see them sort of as exotically blitz and all that sort of thing as they can. I think in the secondary, they really like Adrian Buechele and Hakeem Smith. Up front, they've got 8 or 9 guys really for the first time. And I can't remember when that Louisville's had like a number of guys on the defensive line, and Preston Brown at linebacker. So I think they've got a lot of different guys. I think that you'll probably see Kentucky try to attack the same way, because Louisville's secondary was better towards the end of last year, but they didn't play very well in the bowl game. They gave up a number of long passes, and I think Kentucky will probably try to take advantage of that a little bit.
You mentioned Adrian Buechele. He was the guy that was involved in that Twitter back and forth over the summer. The guys having fun. It's carried out fans buying billboards, Louisville fans buying billboards. Do you think, even though these two teams, I know Louisville's ranked, Kentucky's not, do you think that this game, the expectations or the excitement for it is higher than it's been the last few years?
I can't remember a game. It hasn't been like this since 2007. The 2007 game, even though Louisville's undefeated and ranked going into it, that was the game where I think Kentucky felt like they were going to win, and for the first time in a while. And this is the first time I've seen it sort of this intense. And I think it's nice when it's the first game, because everything you sort of have to build to it. You don't have to slosh through those first 2 throwaway games for both teams.
Right.
So, yeah, this is the most excited I've remembered. I mean, we just had a Kentucky player make a Twitter comment the other day, deleted it, but, I don't remember this sort of hype between the sides and the fans really since '07.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that Kentucky fans, like we said before, this is as optimistic as they will be all year, and unless things really go well. And I think that even though the spread's 14, they feel like they have a shot at Louisville, because Louisville will get better as the year goes on. Kind of on a different story. Yesterday was the Nerlens Noel thing with Kentucky. All Kentucky fans know there's nothing to see here. Just move along, nothing going on, right? But Louisville, the Clint Hurtt situation is something that has, for the last couple of years, will pop up every once in a while. As of like 2 weeks ago, a lot of people saying, well, now the NCAA might come after Louisville and Clint Hurtt because of what happened at Florida with the coach resigning. Do you think that is a problem that's on the horizon that will have to be dealt with, or do you think that maybe this is one of those things where gets brought up occasionally, but not a huge deal for the school?
Well, yeah, I'm surprised by how optimistic they seem to be about him, because when you talk to people in the state of Florida, or that are sort of familiar with what happened down there, they seem to think like he's one of the guys that's going to be implicated to some degree. But Louisville seems pretty optimistic that he's not really going to face any kind of punishment or that sort of thing, and they sort of stand with him. So I don't know. I mean, I've long thought he would sort of go the way of Aubrey Hill, that eventually Louisville's going to have to say, okay, we can't sort of be associated with you. But they seem to not fear that. And I honestly, I don't believe he's done anything wrong since he's been at Louisville. But the stuff in the Yahoo report, that sort of thing, it doesn't look good for him, and I think he'll face some kind of punishment. But I think Louisville, you'll have to sort of pry him out of their cold, dead hands.
Yeah, and he's not a guy that I think anybody's dying to go down there and tell him he's got to pack up his stuff. That's a big guy.
Unbelievable guy.
Before we let you go, this game coming up, of course, Charlie Strong entering his 3rd season, could be a great year. Do you think long-term, 5 years from now, Charlie Strong is still the head coach at Louisville?
I don't know. I think that a lot of coaches in a lot of different places, you think they'd never leave. I mean, I didn't think Urban Meyer wouldn't be at Florida 2 years ago. So I don't know. I mean, I think he's more likely to stay than the average person thinks, because you see him on lists and that sort of thing. People think he'll leave as soon as. I don't believe he'll take the first big job. But I think that there are some jobs that could lure him away, but they're very few. I think Notre Dame or South Carolina, where he was before, or Florida, were that sort of thing to happen. I think those are things that could happen. But I don't think he's going to be sort of on the first train out. So maybe, well, what a weak answer, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that Kentucky fans will be very excited to see him go. But he is, it took him a long time to get a head coaching job. I think loyalty is very important to him. So unfortunately, I don't think he's heading out anytime soon. Mark, thank you very much for being here. Really enjoyed it.